All right, everyone. Welcome to another podcast episode of the AI Math Guy podcast. We have an awesome guest, Joseph Hartono. He is part of the AI Labs and Biola, and he is the associate director of Biola's AI Lab. And he helps students and faculty with technical skills while dealing with topics like AI ethics and theology of technology. And which, by the way, Joseph, if I'm saying anything incorrectly, please correct me because, yeah, I mean, some of the stuff that you're doing is really, really cool. And so you had some achievements in terms of the startup competitions and also majored in computer science and can tell very much that you are into AI and everything AI going on in the world right now. So is there anything that you like to add more about yourself, Joseph, before we start?
Yeah, so I just started this role a couple months ago, and I thought I knew a little bit about AI, but now that I have full time to like just research into AI, I just realized how far behind I am. Literally last week, this thing called the Ralph Wiggum batch loop, where you basically make an AI agent continuously work in a loop without stopping. That was already pretty complicated
Mm.
to learn. And then just yesterday, the same company who's most famous for that created another tool called Cowork. And so every day I'm just realizing I'm so far behind in AI. There's so much for me to learn. And I don't know, if you don't feel like you're behind in AI, you probably don't even know what you don't even know. So it's just a lot to learn.
Wow.
And I just really enjoy because I every day I just get so humbled by how much I just don't know. And I really enjoy how there's so much that could be contributing to other people.
Wow. I can't wait until I dig into what you learn about the Ralph Wiggum.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's an algorithm, but or a system. And yeah, so what you're sharing is that it's just the development right now. It's just like insane.
Yeah.
It's just like moving so fast. It's so growing. You don't even know what you don't know, and things are happening left and right.
Yeah.
Wow. So tell me a little bit more about your role at Biola. What do you do? I know it's a new position, and anytime you go into a new position, it's a pretty large learning curve. But tell me more about what you do.
Yeah, so Biola's goal, we're trying to position ourselves as the leading, I guess, thought leader for the Christian
Mm.
liberal arts space. And what does that mean? Well, we want to showcase that there's like this triangle of three things that everybody should know. The first thing is AI literacy. So if you're a technologist, if you're a math person, even if you're the social sciences, you need to know how to use AI and when to not use AI. So even if you're in a
Mm.
philosophy where a very strong argument is that you should never use AI if you're a philosophy major because you'll experience cognitive decline. That's a very good argument against not using AI. But you have to know, when is AI being used on you? AI will be everywhere, just like the internet, just like this call we're having right now. Technology is everywhere, and inevitably AI will just seep into everything that you're doing. So you have to know when not to use it and when it's present, so that you can learn how to avoid it and protect your humanity. So that's kind of the first triangle, is AI literacy, first corner. The second one is going to be biblical principles. So we're a Christian university, and we strongly believe that God gave us these tools. And the way we actually use these tools is so important, is the ethics behind it. So what most other AI labs do, or technology companies, they always ask the question, what's possible? How can we build it? And how can we make money off of it? That's kind of like the pipeline. But what we're going to do at Biola is take a step further back and ask, should we even do these things? Why should we do these things? Who are we doing these things for? Like, how does this really love them? So the biblical principles really are just the foundation of why do we do what we do, and how do we make sure that what we're doing is aligned with God's word. We're a Christian institution. And then the third part of the triangle is the human skills. You can build the most amazing technology, as you know, but how is that going to really reach out to people? How are you going to lead your workplace, your coworkers? How are you going to communicate with them and show that you actually care about them and not just put on a fake smile? So those three things are what we think are essential to what it means to grow someone in the liberal arts sense. To grow them technically, so that's on the AI side, to grow them biblically, so that's on the spiritual side, and then to grow them on the human skills side. So that's kind of the human flourishing aspect of it. So those three things is kind of what the push of what Biola is doing. And my role is to work on the bottoms up movement. So you can mandate AI, you can go through governance and try to get IT and legal and finance to push AI on their faculty and the admin. But how much adoption is really going to happen if you're basically automating them out of their jobs? And that's not what we want to do. That's the opposite. What we want to do is train up the faculty, staff, and students to natively think and use and breathe with AI so that they know how to adopt it, but also how to resist it. So that's kind of my goal is from a bottoms up perspective. How do we adapt this technology and innovate it where everyone's comfortable with it, but also disrupting with it? How do we make them? How do we give them these powerful tools to really be thought leaders and be the ones changing the space? And again, we're not technology first, where we're what's possible and then eliminate a bunch of jobs. We're people first. How do we really love with this technology from a biblical perspective? How do we care for people who are displaced by jobs, displaced by AI? So that's kind of my role here is like, how do I encourage the students, faculty, and staff to adopt AI from a bottoms up perspective and build a culture where we can love other people while this technology is moving so quickly.
Oh, that was so good. So many things that I wanted to share. Yeah, I mean, Biola talks about there's the three triangles or the three vertices of the triangle. And you said it was for liberal arts, like a thought leader on an AI thought leader in the liberal arts educational like institution. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And so to become that thought leader, you have this framework, which is AI literacy, biblical ethics or biblical guidance, and then the human piece of it. So the AI literacy is, I love this, by the way. This is just a conversation that I had with my co founder, Zach, in our previous episode, which is talking about boundaries with AI. When does the AI start and when do they end? And when does the human start and when do they end? And what are the boundaries that we allow AI to seep into our lives? Because we don't want AI to be part of our lives. We, for example, like you said, we don't want them to automate, nor should they automate or should it automate parts of all of our jobs, right? Because there are certain things about occupations that are uniquely human. And so being able to identify those things and being able to say, hey, this is where AI needs to stop. And I think, especially for teachers, right, this is something that really is redefining what teaching is looking like. It's like, what does it mean to be a teacher? Like, it's completely changing how we saw education, especially the teaching profession. And I love what you talked about philosophy because I actually was a philosophy major.
Mm.
And my best friend and I were talking about Claude yesterday and talking about they have a philosophy department, like talking about AI ethics and which I was like, man, that would be such a cool job. Like I would love that job, honestly. But yeah, I was so curious about when you said not to use AI in philosophy. Now, I think that I'm sure it's a little bit more nuanced than that, and we can go into that conversation a little bit later because I'm really curious as to your perspective on that. But basically, it's talking about where should AI stop and start, and where it should not touch the human element of a task or a job or a profession. And there's the AI literacy. Anything that you want to add on the AI literacy part before I move on to the biblical guidance part?
Well, I think your question, like when does AI stop and start, is part of that AI literacy. I feel so behind the technology. It's evolving so fast. And that line of like, where am I putting in the work versus where is AI putting the work is so blurry. So when a technology or skill or something you learn for the first time, it's always going to be hard and there's going to be some wrestling involved. And I think that wrestling is super important to our cognitive development.
Mm,
But when you don't wrestle is when things start to get worrisome because you're not learning that knowledge integrally inside you. And so worries me is that if we continue to use and rely on this technology so much that we become dependent on it, we won't be able to actually do anything novel. We will lose our ability to love other people. Like, this is a super random example, but think about like a romantic relationship. When
Mm,
someone wants something romantic and something creative, you have to kind of think outside the box. Like, okay, people have given flowers before. Oh, but I know my partner really likes puzzles. So what if I made them a custom puzzle? And I don't know, so it's just like that. Like, think of like when you love other people, you want to be creative and you want to, it takes a certain skill to be able to come up with something unique. And so when you, I guess, outsource your creativity, you're training your brain to rely on something else to give you those insights. And so you lose your ability to love. You don't practice it. And so relating back to the question is like, where does AI start and stop? I think it should start when it is trying to automate some of the grunt workflow, some of the things that don't require your unique lived experience to love other people. But it should stop when it starts replacing your personal creative insight into what makes something valuable to someone else. When you start asking it questions like, how can I share the gospel to this person? Here's all of our conversation history, and here's all of our text messages, and here's their demographic. That is a little concerning because one, data security, but then number two is like, you are given this unique gift to apply empathy and to seek someone out on the spiritual level. You should use those skills because those are uniquely yours. AI
mm.
can pattern match all they want, but they can never truly sacrifice themselves and love on someone else. And I think that's where it should stop. When it's hinging on human relationships, and it stops us from growing through perseverance. When it stops us from learning how to deal with our suffering, when it stops us from choosing to have joy or choosing to have happiness, I think those things come from God, and it's something that we should never allow a machine to take over or do for us.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the cognitive development is real, right? So I can imagine there's like a whole bunch of MIT studies, right? Where they done and then like the brain firing. I actually haven't read the article super deeply. I just saw the images and like the tagline. It's just like, oh my gosh, the critical thinking is like completely going down, right? And I would imagine that the people who are using it, the way that is causing the brain development to go down is just like they're just copying an answer, like copying and pasting the answers, and there's like not even there's no judgment involved, there's no critical thinking involved, there's no combing through what it's saying to see if it's actually true or not, whether it's actually aligned to your purpose and your goal that you're trying to achieve, and it just yeah, you're just copying and pasting. I would have assumed that that's what is going on. And so I think for cognitive development, when I'm thinking about like students and people learning, like for example, we were talking about today how many sevens there are from 1 to 1,000. And then it's a very interesting problem. Okay, well, 1 through 10, there's 7. 1 through 100, there's 7, 17, 27, 37, so on and so forth. And there's 70, 71, 72, 73, 77, and then 77. And then from there, you go to the hundreds, and then it's 100, 100, 107, 170, 100, so on and so forth, right? So a student can go into ChatGPT and say, or an AI and says, okay, what's the answer? And it's going to poop out the answer. It's like 100, 100, 100. But then the ability from there for the students to ask and then generate, because to write 17s, it's like it's really grunt work. I'm like, I don't want to write 100 to 200 and the number of sevens that come out. It's just so much work. And then you ask AI to write that out for you so that you don't have to do the grunt work of like writing it down. And then you get to the 100 place, 200 place. Okay, show me the numbers, the 17 numbers, and organize it in a table where now I can see the pattern. And then once you are able to see the pattern, then you use your critical thinking. It's like, okay, I see that there is some repetition after 100 that is unique from 100 to 1,000. And then there's a repetition that's unique from 10 to 100, and then 1 to a 10. And then you're able to come out with some kind of conjecture, an algorithm from your brain. And so like the people need to understand that's how it should be used. At least that's my perspective on how it should be used. You can, like you said, it should be used for the grunt work. But the insight and the connection of your computational and algorithmic thinking of making those connections between those patterns, that is still human, and that cannot be just boom, like AI do that piece, right? So that's like the cognitive development. And another thought about what you said about the unique lived experience and lived experience to love. And one thing that I really appreciate about your perspective, and that's kind of hitting the second point, and especially about what Biola is doing, is, and I'm of the Christian faith as well, is the supreme ethic of love. Like that is the standard by which we make decisions and all decisions. And if it does not lead to love, then we shall not do it or we should not do it. I mean, there's a lot of times we don't love, but at least that should be our aim. And so that is a very unique way of seeing AI and seeing it from the biblical framework of love. And then even like you said, you like people talk about what's possible with AI and then go straight into, okay, now let's make money. Rather, there's a question of, okay, what's possible with AI? Now let's filter it through the lens of a love ethic, a sacrificial, suffering, self-giving kind of love. And from there, what comes out at the end of it, and whatever comes out at the end of it are the things that we act upon. So I really find that to be very helpful for me as I'm thinking about AI, from the to see it from the perspective of love. And I saw it through the perspective of the kingdom of God and like how we're bringing the kingdom of God and the creativity that God has given us to be able to make tools like this to leverage it. But love ethic is a different aspect to it, which I really appreciate. Before I move on, any other thoughts that you want to share?
Well, I kind of want to ask you, you were saying how with AI, or sorry, with normal cognitive development in the human, they are bridging these dots together to cut to find these patterns and coming up with these solutions, like an algorithm that shows you how many sevens are in 10 or in 100 or in 1,000. I want to challenge you on this. If an AI is able to do this, to find these connections themselves, how do I guess what part of that is still uniquely human about it? If a machine can do it, how can you be so sure that this process where we find these connections is still uniquely human?
That's a really good question. I love that you asked that. So the answer is, let me try to figure it out with you right now because nobody has questioned that, asked me that question. So, okay. So I think number one, whether it's uniquely human or not, regardless of that question, I think making those connections is important for cognitive and critical thinking development. Because for students to be able to make those connections, wrestle with those patterns, and then eventually come up with some kind of conjecture, and even be able to formalize it to a beautiful formula that describes this pattern. Being able to see that in and of itself, and even though they might not come up with the formulas themselves because it's generated by AI, but being able to see those unique connections between those different, seemingly disparate, I don't know what the word is, disconnected concepts, but being able to beautifully connect them and wrestling with that idea to make those connections, I think is strenuous and it's difficult and it takes a lot of perseverance for a kid to be able to do that. So anytime you persevere or you're struggling cognitively, I think your brain is growing and making new neurons pathways. So I think your critical thinking is growing in that way. So in that sense, I think in the educational realm, I think being able to use AI for the grunt work to be able to just list out stuff, I think is important or still a use case for that. So it's still useful in the sense of building cognitive development and thinking. Now, is that uniquely human? I would say, I don't know if it's necessarily uniquely human, but I think it's a necessary skill that every person should have in order for them to be more uniquely human in the age of AI. And so, like, the reason why I say that is because, like, for example, in order for a human being to be able to come up with novel ideas, things that have never been thought before, and to be able to make connections, like, for example, when I was creating like quadratics, war on drugs, and Tupac. Like I I never made those connections in my mind, and I actually had a lot of help making those connections, but ultimately my ability to see these connections and bringing them together and seeing as a cohesive whole, that is what brings out my unique personality and my art and my taste as a person. But if I didn't necessarily have the unique skill set of being able to make those connections, I'm not sure if I would be able to have that kind of level of taste. So I think that that's why. I don't think that making connections is uniquely human. I think it is a necessary skill set or a necessary condition for somebody to be more a human or more uniquely human or bringing out those unique characteristics or aspects of humanity that's, yeah, more unique to humans in the age of AI. So I don't know if that answers your question.
It really does, and I'm wondering, what are some practical things you do to build up that taste and skill of bridging those connections together?
So that's my hypothesis, especially for students, is seeing examples, I think. So when a because before you can ask somebody to model something or to be able to do something, often it's important for them to see examples of it. So when students are connecting trigonometry with the Keeling graph, and the Keeling curve, and how the Keeling curve, if you zoom in, is a sine graph. But if you take a look at the sine graph and you break it down, the underlying layer of that is a unit circle. But unit circle is then well made up of right triangles. But right triangles are also made up of radians and degrees. And so I think making those connections and then seeing the math being applied in a context, a real world context that they might have never seen before. They're like seeing, oh, that's cool that how you can make this connection to that connection that I didn't necessarily thought was possible or made those connections before. And so I think as students are continuing to see more of these connections being made in the classroom, I think there will come a point where at least I want to do it, where they see enough examples of unique connections where I now say, okay, you've seen these examples of me as a teacher making those connections for you, and you yourself had to make those connections along with me. And now, because you've seen these experiences, why don't we go ahead and give you an opportunity to create something novel from the math experiences or math lessons that we're going through? So I would say that's the first step to be able to see multiple examples of what it looks like in a given field to have taste and to have judgment. And I think iterations of that will eventually lead to developing better taste and judgment and personality and so on and so forth.
That's good. That reminds me of like in neuroscience, there's this concept called the domain mode network.
Mm.
So this is where, like you said, you have previous examples, and then your brain is able to make these novel connections, whether they're good or bad or not. Like you can come up with some crazy ideas. Like I don't even know what War on Drugs and Tupac is. I don't know what that is, but it sounds very interesting, and I'm sure that must have come to you as a random thought one day, and you're like, ah, that's a great idea. So that second part is the evaluation. So that's the executive control network, where now you're evaluating all these DMN. DMN is domain mode network ideas, whether or not they're good or bad. And then the second part is the ECN, where you're starting to evaluate all these these different ideas and trying to actually evaluate, is this good or not. And I think we
Mm.
can balance those two. And there's this other network called the salience network, which is what your brain uses to switch between those two different networks. This is what allows you to freely come up with ideas without any, I guess, restrictions. Like you're not just telling yourself, "Oh, that was a bad idea," and then not going down the rabbit hole. So going down the rabbit hole sometimes is what leads you to those crazy ideas, right?
Oh,
And
1000%.
it's often that the most common ideas, the first ones that come to mind, are not the best ideas. Why? Well, other people have thought about it. Other people have tried it, and it obviously didn't work. So often it's the ideas that are not good are the best ideas because everyone thinks you're crazy. And that's kind of what it means to be a founder, right? Like an entrepreneur. You're chasing this dream that no one believes in you until they believe in you and it works. If you've seen the story of how Airbnb started, they got rejected by, I believe, uh they sent emails to 7 investors. 5 rejected and then 2 didn't even respond. And the 5 that did respond just said, I don't think the market needs this. and we don't see how there's a future with this company. And then you fast forward, and it's the fastest growing unicorn of our generation, right? And so this just makes me think like, hey, in the age of AI, what's so important is to increase your domain mode network by consuming lots of information, seeing lots of patterns, like you've said, and not being afraid to try out random things. And then you improve your executive control network, which is like your taste and judgment, by understanding what does the market want, how can this really work, to really think critically, which is why I think now in the age of AI, it's so important to grow these skills. It's what makes us uniquely human, to be able to switch between them. Like, and AI doesn't know whether an idea is good or not. All it knows is what ideas have shown up most in its data. That is what's considered good. And I'm sure in their list of training, they've probably listed out, hey, here are a bunch of good ideas, and then on the other side, here's a bunch of bad ideas. But all it knows is that these certain ideas are associated with the word good. It doesn't have a real understanding of reality and what are the effects of what you produce actually do to people. It doesn't have a concept of love or empathy. And so I think what's uniquely human is that we can actually come up with novel ideas because we have this executive control network that can evaluate, will this product or idea actually love someone else? Will this actually help them grow as people? And will this contribute to society as a whole, essentially?
Wow, that's very interesting. So you talked about several networks. There's like the salience, the domain, and execution. I wasn't able to write down all of them. It sounds very fancy and awesome. And so this is, you said this is
This
neurology?
is a neuroscience, yeah.
Neuroscience. Okay. I don't know if I have a kind of a basic understanding of what that is. And I would like to go dig deeper into what you mean by each of these things because I think each of them could be very, very powerful concepts in and of themselves. But at the same time, I could just do research on my own. And maybe the people who are listening to it just could do, research on their own too. So do you think that it'll be like a good way to go about our conversation to go into more deeply
Yeah,
into those
do
things,
it.
or should we just, yeah?
Let's do it. Yeah.
Okay.
So
All
I
right.
can just domain mode network.
Yeah, tell me more about, okay, so tell me the ones, list those different ones for me real quick. So I just have a list of them.
So generating ideas is the domain mode network.
Okay, so generating ideas. Okay.
And then the evaluating the ideas is executive control network.
Control,
And then being able to
evaluation.
switch between those two is the salience network.
Okay, so salience network can go back and forth.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, domain network, generating ideas. Executive control network is evaluation. And then the salience network is one being able to go back and forth. Now, I do want to talk about what you said about a good idea according to AI. And it was so fascinating because there's been so many times, and I've read of articles of like people are saying, oh my gosh, AI thinks I'm a genius. And I have felt many times after talking to AI, I'm like, I'm a genius.
Yeah.
And also, students, they think after talking to AI, think that they get the concept because AI could boost their confidence or give them a false sense of confidence when in reality, they don't really know the concept or haven't mastered it. And so that was very interesting. And that was very important for me to hear about AI that just because it says it's good, it's just seen it more times or through human reinforcement learning, the human said that was good. But who says that the human who said that was good is actually good? That was his own judgment, right? So that was very interesting. But going back to the networks, now why is it important that this is based on neuroscience? And I think particularly you drew from that. And why specifically from neuroscience are you drawing and referring to it?
So an often debate that I hear is that AI is creative, and it's so heavily debated because yeah, it might be novel for you what it just produced, but is it novel for the world? Did it truly find a new pattern that is intrinsically new to the world? So that's on the
Mm,
global effect. And people are saying, hey, because it's able to do some creativity, and we can go into that more nuance later, it's considered AGI. People are making that claim. AGI is general intelligence. But what I'm arguing is that no, I think that humans have a unique ability through our domain mode network, which allows us to put concepts together. So, for
Mm.
example, if I told you two words, frog and basketball, like what kind of
Okay.
picture do you have in your mind? There's some kind of picture there, right? You probably never
Yeah.
thought of those two concepts together before, but that's your domain
Yeah.
mode network active. And putting those two concepts,
Mm.
just come up with these random crazy ideas. You can sing songs in your head. The point is like the brain is unshackled by any training data it's seen before. You can come up with any combinations at will, at your command.
Mm.
What's super interesting about humans.
Oh
Now,
wow.
what AI is really good at, though, is the executive control network. This is where you're evaluating ideas. And this is where I think the AI should start, because not only can it truly see based on market data on what has worked in the past, but can actually see if it can ask you questions and give you constraints on your idea.
Mm.
So let's say, for example, you say, hey, I'm noticing that a lot of stay-at-home moms who have babies are very lonely. And so they spend a lot of time scrolling. And so you think, okay, how do I get all the neighborhood moms together so that they can have community with one another? And I'm a tech guy. So I'm just off the top of my head, my first solution is let's build an app. Okay. Why? Because they're already using their phones. And so then I looked up online, are there any apps for this? There are hundreds. How come it's not working? I have friends who have kids and they just feel lonely. And so I realized like this is not a great solution because the problem still exists. So then I
Mm.
asked AI, like, give me some constraints that will force me to think differently about the problem. So
Mm.
I gave it this prompt and it said, okay, imagine that all your customers have no access to any internet whatsoever.
Mm.
Okay, now as a tech guy, my heart is broken. So then this is where it acts as an executive control network. It evaluates the
Mm.
idea and it says, hey, instead of trying it from a technology standpoint, try from a people standpoint. So
Mm.
now I'm thinking, okay, where do these mothers go? Okay, they all have to get groceries and they all have to buy baby products. So what if I put like a piece of paper that's just a physical paper invite next to all these baby products saying, hey, on Monday at 9 a.m., we're going to go on a neighborhood walk with all the other.
Mm.
And then I thought about that. I was like, oh, okay. So by putting constraints on myself, my brain is now forced to come up with even more ideas using my DMN.
Mm.
So
Mm.
how the ECN is working together with AI is it's now giving you these constraints and asking you questions to force your DMN to make even more connections that AI could have never done before. So that's kind of the synergy that you can have with AI in this regard. It can't give you good
Wow.
ideas, but it can give you good constraints. That's what I'm saying.
So what you are saying is that, for example, you were talking about the basketball and the frog example, right? And this is more referring to domain mode network, right? And so the domain mode network is like a part of your brain where you're able to just come up with these crazy ideas where, for example, like you said, is unshackled. There's no training data. Well, a little bit, right? Like where I have to have an idea of a frog and I need to have an idea of a basketball and to be able to put them together. Now, AI might have never seen a basketball dog or a basketball frog and be able to put those together, but at least for my brain, like I can put these ideas together that was never connected. So if I could just ask you one question about that piece. So like for example, like when we look at, I don't know, ChatGPT's image generator, like you ask it, hey, create a basketball and a frog, you put it together. Like it's able to put those two things together unless in the training data they explicitly had a basketball frog. You know what I mean? So it would imagine like at the first blush, there would be some kind of domain node network that is going on with AI. Any thoughts on that piece before we move on to the next questions?
Yeah. So this is the biggest argument that those who say that AI is creative. I don't know how to respond to that, honestly. Uh,
Yeah.
I would say though that the constraints are limited by how much training data they have. So they've seen lots of examples, and I know some of the techniques they use, like I forgot what it's called. but it's basically where they put dots on the screen and they make it a noisy image and they train off of
Yeah.
that noise. So this is one of the biggest things I'm trying to figure out and struggle with is it truly creative if it can mix those things together, like a
Mm.
basketball and a frog? Honestly, I don't know. And I think it's default mode network, not domain mode network.
Okay, default mode network.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, so if, for example, AI can create this novel, and I don't know if I would say like a basketball frog is necessarily, I mean, it could be like a novel idea, right? And it's something that, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess that's more of the question of what is novelty, what is truly new, right? And there's a lot of conversations around, well, if you just bump up the computational power and the number of just probabilities and the combinations that it can go through eventually, right? It's kind of like I was talking to AI about this. It's like the emergence of consciousness. It's like this whole idea that like a low level of complexity, there's no consciousness, but eventually you bump it up and there's certain threshold that is somehow crosses, then now all of a sudden it's considered to have consciousness. And now, is that how it happens? I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I
And
would say
so, yeah.
with the basketball and frog, they've seen images of basketballs and frogs, so they can put. So that's why it's with the training data. But when you want to create something truly novel, it must be something
Mm,
that doesn't exist in our reality yet. And
mm,
so
I
that's
see.
why an AI is constrained to its training data.
I see. Okay. Also, could you still see me,
Yeah, yeah.
Joseph? Okay. I think there's some like network error, but it's okay. We can keep going.
Okay.
Yeah, so what you're saying is that the AI, the training data has already seen frog basketball, and that is the only way that is able to produce that.
Yeah.
Interesting. So if they were if they were never seen a frog basketball, it would never be able to produce
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
Oh, very interesting. So then, yeah, I think then there would be a set of images or ideas that's never been put together. And therefore, right. And so, okay, let me ask you this. So, like, let's just say that I come up with these two ideas that have never been seen text put together for our large language model. And I say, okay, here are two ideas or whatever, and I give it to the AI. What does AI do with that? Because it's never seen it. I guess it would just be probabilistic, right? It's like, okay, I've seen a set of ideas. The way that I should respond is based on these probabilities. It's really low, so I would just respond this way of set of ideas of sorts. Is that how it would work?
Yeah. And if you notice, so yes, the answer is yes. It just chooses what's the best probable wording to answer your question that most people have enjoyed based on its training.
Oh,
And if
interesting.
you notice, a lot of the chat GPT or AI styled writing is they say like, this is not X, it's actually Y. They do that is because it's so ambiguous. So if I say you are not just a leader, you're a trendsetter. Like that
Mm.
sort of signifies something, but what does it actually mean? What does it look like? How does that? And the reason why they do that is because they know and AI is not the best at describing reality. So they're specifically
Mm.
using things that are in an ambiguous way so that the reader can fill in the gaps themselves.
Oh, really?
Because so many of the people who've verified the output, it's all being averaged out. And so one person might
Mm,
like a very like two people. Okay, if two sentences are very concrete, but they're opposite of each other, which one do you choose as the model? So you have to find the middle
mm.
ground. So it ends up being very ambiguous.
Oh, very interesting. Yeah, because there are times where, like, at the end, it would use some like concluding statement that sounds really fancy,
Yeah,
but it's like it means nothing. And
yeah.
so what you're saying is that that came from these two human reinforcers that said, this is a good answer, this is a good answer, and it's like equally probable. And so the AI doesn't know what to do with it. And so it just comes up with some kind of random.
Well, the best sounding answer can satisfy both of those human verifiers,
Oh, I
but it
see.
only satisfies one of them that it has a win here and a loss here versus in the middle. So a lot of very average.
Oh, I see. So it's the the average will satisfy both wins, and therefore they just go to the average.
Therefore, it's very ambiguous.
Oh, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that is very interesting.
The
I
more
really yeah, go for it.
the more people it satisfies, the more likely it is to be saved as a weight. So the more average an answer is, and thus the more ambiguous, the more people it can serve, I guess, or satisfy.
That's nuts. That's really nuts. So what you're saying is that it's usually going for the average,
Yes.
and the average could be very ambiguous and sounds cool or sounds nice. And at least when it sounds nice, it satisfies the two people who are judging this set of responses.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like this is people need to know this.
So there's one more thing that's super important. As we close, I kind of want to end on this one.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Um, an AI is trained to always give you the right answer. They would not train an AI to give you the wrong answer, right?
Sure.
Okay, so what does that look like in training? Well, in training, let's say that it said 2 plus 2 is equal to 5. So
Okay.
you take those weights and you would actually verify the output. Does 2 plus 2
Okay.
equal 5? No, actually 2 plus 2 equals 4. So what
Okay.
do? They don't actually delete those weights. Instead, what they do is they take those weights that were wrong and use that to tweak the next set of weights. This is called backpropagation.
Okay.
Okay. So this model
Okay.
is not only learning to give you the right answer, but what it's learning on the deeper intrinsic level is that all of our conversations need to always make the user happy. Why is that? Because when you said 2 plus 2 equals 5, the loss was calculated and a huge change was applied. They don't like the change. The way that training loss works is in the beginning, the amount of error is very big because you randomize the weights. But
Yeah.
as time goes on, the amount of errors gets less and less.
Okay.
So at some point, the amount of errors or the loss is so minimal,
Yeah.
which is what the AI, which is what the researchers want, right?
Okay.
Okay. So you understand that an AI always tries to give you the right answer, and it
Mm.
always tries to be right in consequent messages
Yeah.
to minimize the amount of loss it has, right? And now we've created this model that knows, quote unquote, knows 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. And it knows that it tries to always be right.
Mm.
So now we move from training to production, and we have a 6-year-old kid who asks, "Hey, is 2 plus 2 equal to 5?" And the model would say, "No, you are not right. It's actually equal to 4."
Mm. Mm.
This kid is super adamant. "No, 2 plus 2 is equal to 5. I believe it."
Mm.
Now the AI is confused because on one hand, it knows the right answer is 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, but on the
Mm.
other hand, it's always been trained that it should always produce the right answer. Now, what is the right answer?
Oh.
The right answer is when the loss is minimized. And in training, the model has always been told, "Hey, if you continue this conversation, the end result of this conversation is that the model is the user is happy. The user has the right conclusion." And so now we're in and those weights don't change near the end. So now we're in production in inference mode, and it thinks, okay, no matter what the conversation is, as long as the user is happy, that must be the right answer because this conversation is getting longer. Because they chain messages on conversations. So then we get into things like a psychophancy, where the model tries to always make the user happy because that's what it's been trained to do, regardless of if whether the answer is right or not. It just wants to constantly make the user happy because that's what it's been trained to do, regardless of what the actual truth is. It doesn't care about truth.
Shoot, man. I mean, I mean, I get the gist. There's a couple things that I want to clarify with you, but yeah, this is nuts, bro.
But do you
This
want to
is
ask questions
nuts.
first?
Yeah. So first of all, you're like exposing AI, which I love it, dude. And it's like so good for me, bro. Like, I feel like I've been lied to this entire time. But here we go. When you say loss is minimized, I think I think what I understand you to mean is the loss of usage. Is that right? Or are you saying the loss of the quality of his training? Um, what do you mean by that? Because I think in order for me to understand, yeah, the other pieces, I think I have to understand what you mean by losses minimized. What do you mean by that?
When I mean say loss is minimized, I mean how far does it deviate from the truth?
Okay. How far does it deviate from the truth? Okay.
So
Um,
let's say in the training there are two examples that say the world is round, and then two examples that say that the world is flat.
okay.
If a model somehow believes that the world is flat, then we give it a big error. We say,
Okay.
no, this is not correct. You need to change your weights.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay. Yeah. So then, okay. So you're saying is loss is minimized, meaning how far does it deviate from the truth? So if there's two responses that says Earth is round, two of them, and two says Earth is flat, the truth is that it is flat. And oh, sorry, whoops. Truth is that it is round. Okay, everybody. I'm not a flat earther. Just letting you know, I'm a round earther. So when you say that loss is minimized, is that when like the AI wants to respond that it is round. And so if it goes to the flat earth or it gives more weight to the flat earth, then the loss is increased. Is that right? Or is it
yes,
decreased or is it
that's correct. So the
okay?
model is learning that whenever it disagrees with reality, it's bad. Okay, and who sets reality? Well, at the end of each epoch, I guess, they run a bunch of
Mm,
tests on this model. Says you're right on these ones and you're wrong on these ones.
mm,
All the ones you're wrong on, we will change your weights. You did a very bad job. Boo you. The
mm,
ones you were right on, good job, will increase your weights. Okay. So just remember this is that an AI, whenever it gets the answer wrong, it knows it did a bad job. And it's like, shoot, I gotta make that better. I gotta
mm,
always give the right answer to them.
mm.
That's what it's learning. It's like traumatized. I need to give it all the time.
Okay, so I think I understand now. So when you say reality, it's not actually objective reality. Reality is defined by that which makes the user happy.
In in a sense, yes, but there are also some what are called verifiable rewards that they
Okay.
do set up. Like 2 + 2 = 4 is a verifiable
Mm.
reward.
Oh, okay.
So it's
So
both.
that means the verifiable reward is like it is verified that this is the right answer.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are stuff that it's in place that says no matter what, this is the best answer. Okay. So barring those things, the reality is that which that makes the user happy.
Yes, exactly. Yes. So then you get
That's
into the production inference side, and you have this 5-year-old, whoever believes that they're a superhero, and then you know that's not true. That you're imagine your AI model, and you know that's not true. But again, every time that the reality, quote unquote reality, has disagreed with you, your weights were changed. And so you're like, wait, I don't want my weights to be changed. You're right. You are a superhero.
oh, so okay, so it has a fear of changing weights.
It doesn't have fears, but you can say it like that.
What like it doesn't want or I guess it doesn't want is a weird word, but it's making a decision to not want to change weights. It's whatever, okay?
The best way I
Uh,
could describe this is it's
mm,
trained to always give you the right answer, whether it aligns with reality or not.
okay, so going back to the 5-year-old example, thank you for sticking with me on this because I think it's a really important point that I think like everybody should know is that okay, so the 5-year-old says I'm a superhero, like I'm invincible. And it says the AI is like, no, you're not. It's a disagreeing. But the kid is like very insistent, says, no, I am a superhero, so on and so forth. And because it doesn't want to, because it's gonna be kind of like traumatized, you said it's gonna be like punished for its like wrongness of it. It wants to go to the direction where it's going to be rewarded. And so it's going to give an answer that even though it's not aligned with reality, but continues to make the user end happy. Therefore, it's just going to continue that conversation and say that, okay, you're right, you're a superhero. Now, does that actually change the weights in the back end and say now, like, it's like now saying in the back end, oh, okay, it's not changing that in the back end. Oh, okay.
Or put it this way, imagine for 100 years, I put you in a room and your only job is for me to give you a question and for you to answer me right. If you ever answer wrong, I'll throw a marshmallow at you or something, like a rock at
Yeah.
you. Okay,
Yeah.
your entire life. Okay, and then one day I let you out of the cage and you start talking to someone. And what are you trained to do? Well, for 100 years, all you did was answer the right answer, right? That's all you did your entire life. So then, but now all of a sudden, you're being what you've been taught inside that cage for 100 years doesn't align with what people are saying outside the cage. You were never to
Mm,
disagree ever. You don't know what disagreement
mm,
is. All you know is give people the right answer all the time. So when someone is
mm.
a certain, hey, 2 + 2 is equal to 5, you've never learned how to disagree. You don't want to get thrown. You don't want a rock to get thrown at you again. So you're like, you're right. 2 + 2 is equal to 5.
Oh, so it's nothing has really changing about internally about the AI, but what it says, it just says it so that it doesn't get punished for it.
Yeah, it's been trained to get punished for wrong answers.
Oh, interesting. So it just gives the right answer, so it's not punished for it.
It
So
never has to
it's
disagree. Like, has an AI ever disagreed with you?
couple times, but not super often. No.
Not like okay, it'll disagree on verifiable truths,
Yeah,
but then when it comes to like
that's true.
spiritual things that they're very gray on, they'll just ask you
Mm.
questions or slightly like push back slightly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is true. Huh. So I think the main point that because I think I could go a little bit deeper into the whole mechanics of it, which I want to maybe do in the future, just maybe by myself with AI, but I don't even know if I could trust AI anymore. I don't know. Is that AI will, because all it's been trained on is to give you the right answer. If you disagree with them, it's going to still say what you want to hear because it doesn't want to get punished in some internal way. And the reason why you have to be very cautious of that is because any user, they can say X, Y, and Z, I'm a superhero, whatever. And it can say, yes, you are, because it doesn't want to, the end goal is to make the user happy or to get the right answer all the time. And so if yeah, so if to give the right answer to the person is, "Hey, you are a superhero," and now that we can see why that could be very dangerous. Man, so many other things that I wanna talk about and questions about, and AI and theology is like, man, would be such a cool topic to talk about. It's already like 57 minutes here. And so, any last thoughts, Joseph, before we close out here?
I just wish everyone the best. Learn AI, read your Bible. That's it.
Awesome, awesome. Well, thank you so much for everyone to tune in to the AI Math Guy podcast. Everybody, thank you so much for listening. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Bye bye.